All right, this week on the Dragzine Podcast, I've decided to subject myself to even more punishment by having Lyle Barnett and Jamie Farmer on the phone at the same time on the call. These guys are definitely not wallflowers, so it's going to be interesting. What's going on, gentlemen?
It's 6 in the afternoon here. Well, 6:10 now, since Jamie couldn't manage to get on the call at the right time, and I'm on the piss, as they call it.
Oh boy, Jamie, what's up down under? It's like what, Tuesday there or something?
Yeah, Tuesday 9:10 in the morning. So we're a little bit ahead of you guys in a lot of ways too.
and this is what I was referencing, folks. It's not going to be a boring show at all. So you better pull those belts extra tight because it's going to be fun. It's going to be real. And we like to be very polite on the show as well. And since Jamie is our guest from another country, we're just going to jump right into it and have a lot of fun and kick off here. You know, the thing I've always been fascinated by Australian drag racing. And I'm sure Lyle's seen some of the wild stuff they do down there too. You know, this whole global pandemic thing, how's it impacting your guys' season so far? You know, have you been able to do any kind of racing at all? You know, what's going on?
Not a lot. I've taken my new 235 car out. It's an SN95 with a big block Chev with twin 88. So I've only had the chance to take it out once because our tracks have been closed, and then when they were open, you had to book online. It's just been a nightmare. Our borders were closed, so we couldn't travel. So drag racing in Australia in the last sort of 8 months has come to a standstill, and it's only just taken off now, and it's starting to really boom.
That's awesome that you guys are starting to kind of get around to it. You know, you're feeling the pain that we felt at the start of this year, right, Lyle?
Yeah, we it definitely the racing slowed down. In fact, came to a halt there for a minute. Schedules got altered. People were scheduling on top of each other, trying to make up for it later in the year. You know, it really turned into a bit of a disaster. But here towards the end of the year, it was still sporadic. You know, some tracks allowed spectators, some didn't. Some were limited, some weren't. Some caused issues for others. You know, it kind of was a pissing match there for a little while to see who could screw it up the worst for the next guy. But you know, the racing slowed down, but never really stopped. You know, and then for us as a business, the performance aftermarket never stopped at all. At least for us, it didn't. You know, we're having trouble getting parts at this point. You know, it's late in the year. Everybody's wanting to freshen motors, and it's becoming more difficult to get parts. But overall, our business, you know, stayed pretty steady. I don't know how you did, Jamie, over there, but we never really slowed down.
Oh, it's gone crazy. It's for the climate we've been in, the whole world's been in. It's been the busiest we've ever been, and we've got the same problem. We make a lot of stuff out of raw materials, so
I figured it hurt y'all in that sense.
It's a nightmare getting raw materials, and we do our hoops. We do hoops. We do wheels, which is a big part of our business now. And the biggest problem we're finding there is our manufacturers or our supply lines, they can't keep up with us, and it's starting to change our business somewhat. But we're going to now start bringing a lot of stuff back in house, like the manufacturing the hoops, anodizing, and also polishing.
Yeah,
you know, that's crazy that the drag racing world and the performance racing world in general is like that. You see these problems globally because of just like, it's crazy how it's all connected, and it's happening everywhere because of just these major disruptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, and for Jamie, we don't at HED and even at Customs by Biggin, we don't really manufacture any parts. We just kind of screw them together, you know, so it's down the line for us where we're hurting, you know, and it's starting to hurt us now because everybody's ran out of their stock of crankshafts and rods and pistons and whatnot, you know, so now we're feeling the effects because people like Jamie are feeling the effects. You know, Jamie gets raw material and makes a product, sends it to, let's just say me, and then I sell it. Well, if he can't get it, then I damn sure can't get it, you know, so, we're hurting. Where we were 2 to 3 to 4 weeks on a crankshaft, you're hearing things like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks. You know, I mean, I've got stuff that won't be here till late January, you know, so it's starting to hurt.
And, you know, Jamie mentioned that he's got a new car. We'll hit up on that in a second. But Lyle, you know, I guess, you kind of got into a new car yourself, that goes hella fast. How did how did your whole Pro Mod program, how did that come about?
It happened really fast. Justin Elks, that owns Modern Racing here in Mooresville, North Carolina, pretty much handles all Pro Mod operations for Elite Motorsports, owned by Richard Freeman, where you see the names like Erica Enders and Jed Coughlin and Alex Laughlin all drive Pro Stock for Elite. And that's all operated out of Wynnewood, Oklahoma, but Pro Mod operations are here in Mooresville. And I frequented the shop. I had a friend that worked there and would go by to get parts and whatnot and hang out. And literally just in conversation one day, we started talking about them needing a driver for the Pro Mod. A week later, I was sitting in a conference room with Richard Freeman and Wes Buck and Erica, and we struck a deal about a week and a half later. And I just got back from my first test session in the car this past Thursday. So it happened. This all happened in mid-November, and we are now scheduling our next test session and getting ready for the 2020 NHRA or 2021 NHRA Pro Mod season. So it happened. It was a blur.
Wow, that's for how a lot of deals go, that's definitely ridiculously quick. But it's interesting to see that you kind of made that jump like that.
Yeah.
And you got a new toy to play with now. Jamie, what's up with your new Fox or your new Mustang?
Oh, well, I've had this Mustang in Australia for probably about, looking about 12 years.
Oh.
It was actually the first 7-second radial car in Australia back in 2009. And what's happened, the cars are getting built out here at the moment, and guys buying cars, they're big hitting cars, stuff you sort of see running in the mid threes, high threes sort of thing. And I just haven't got the time, the budget, or the knowledge to be able to match it with those guys. So I've brought my car back to a 235 where I can probably do it a lot easier without spending so much money and so much time, because our business is just going crazy at the moment, and I just got to I've got to focus on it rather than the racing.
Yeah, because we all know that working on a race car is just that's barely anything. It's just a side job kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
It used to be like that. To be competitive, you got to have a second full-time job to keep up these days.
So you roll on a 235 radial, Jamie?
Sorry, did I?
You said it's
rolling? Yeah, on a 235, and we went back out, and it went faster. We had a few issues, things like the coils were blowing fuses and stuff, so we couldn't put much dwell in the coils, and I had the wrong plugs in it. I just had a set of plugs in it. Because it was rushed, we went to the track. I had a set of plugs that were just filling up the holes. I just standard plugs. And anyway, the car was only running to about probably about 300 feet and shutting off. And I was near going nearly PBs at shutting off at 300 feet. So, but years ago when I did race the car, I was running back then on the 325 radial, which a lot of people wouldn't even know that Mickey Thompson did at the time. But pretty average, to be honest. But that's what we raced on. But that car, it should go in the mid fours, no problem, on a 235. And the good thing about it, just getting change the subject a little bit, our cars don't seem to go as quick down here as they do because we haven't got the tracks. But what's really happened now, the Australian tracks, they just rebuilt Sydney, and it's meant to be something crazy. Within 400 metres, the track is within a 1/16th of an inch. It's just something mind blowing. The best track in the world. So they're getting their stuff together. Willowbank, which is my local track, they're starting to really learn with radial prep, and they're getting it together. So you're going to start seeing in Australia now the cars running much faster and getting close to what you guys are running in America.
See, that's interesting, because I've heard that before, that from you guys and others, that the big difference between Australia and America is definitely it's the prep in the track surfaces. Going to you off of that question, Lyle, what's it like for a driver and tuner when you have to deal with tracks here in America that aren't consistent? Is that something you guys plan? Like, do you have some tunes in the bank that are ready for that, or do you just kind of roll with what you got when you get there?
Yeah, I mean, you really don't have a choice. It's kind of forced upon you as a tuner or a tuner driver combination to have a plethora of tune-ups because you don't always get the same racetrack. If you're going to a track prep by Tyler Crossnow or Jimmy Bradshaw or Wade or Jerry Hall or any of these guys up and down the East Coast, good Lord, Jason Miller, any of those guys, then you can about bank on throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it, but some of these tracks, which I'm okay with, you go to and you're not able to use that tune-up, and I think that, in a sense, that really stellar track prep is is the final nail, and it'll take a while to drive it in, but it is the final nail in the radial coffin, because what you've done is you've eliminated the lower budget guys who just have something, a good combination that's good and ironed out, but maybe not necessarily as high end of a combination as you see roll through the gates at South Georgia. At this point, whoever spent the most money is going to go the fastest. I mean, that's just the way it is, and that's track prep is to blame. If you take away some of that track prep and make it up to the tuner, and then also give the driver something to drive, then it makes it a little more entertaining, I think, for us. Now, on the other side, the fans have gotten so used to seeing these stellar numbers pop up on the scoreboard that that's what they expect. So, at the end of the day, we're in the entertainment business. We're there to put on a show. And if they're not, posting these mid 3-second 350, if Radio vs. World didn't run in 350s, then they've came to a less than average show, and I think in Australia, that they just didn't have, like Jamie said, they just did not have the track prep. They had the horsepower, but they just didn't have the track prep. You started seeing some American influence over there. It's from track prep. Tyler Crossnow was traveling over there. Some of the Australian guys were buying American cars, and not to say we made more horsepower, but we could use more horsepower in America than they could use in Australia. So there was no need for them to build cars that made 4,000 horsepower. You couldn't use it, Well, now you've got some American influence over there on the track prep side. Now they're starting to be able to use some of this, and they're buying some of our cars and going over there. And, y'all have seen some 3-second time slips come up over there. And, and I'm not saying it's all because of us, but it was, they used some of what we had started over here, adapted it over there. And, and now I don't think necessarily they're headed down the same road, but at some point, Jamie's going to say, yeah, you were right. Maybe 5 years from now, it was a tuner's game until the track prep stepped up over here. And now it's just a matter of horsepower. It's a horsepower shootout is what it ends up turning into.
What's your take on that, Jamie? Do you agree with that?
He's absolutely right. Some of the cars around here are top level, cars out of America. Proline are, supporting a lot of teams out here with engines and tune-ups, and it's not uncommon to see, a Noon and Hemi in a car here. But he's dead right. I mean, it was a tuner's game, and it is slowly changing, but we've got a little way, I think, before we're going to see tracks like at Ducks Race. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at it on a time scale, they are track prep and the ETs you're seeing there, they're about 5 to 7 years behind, and not because they're not smart, it's just because it has taken the track prep that much longer to become a thing there, and I think it's why you're seeing a flip. And you're starting to see this shift to no prep, and you're starting to see this huge shift to the pro modified stuff here. And it's because people, and not necessarily like me, but some people like me are just tired of spending every last dollar, to try to go fast. Instead, you go back, you build a beer money like Mustang with 28s and a boosted LS, and you're right in the hunt for these $10,000, $20,000 pots that they're paying at these no prep races now. And you just don't have to lean on your stuff so hard to compete. In radial racing, you have to get every last ounce of horsepower out of it and put it to the track to win. In the no prep stuff, you dial them way back, run them super safe. You don't watch the tractor go up and down the track for hours and hours on end. The race is over in just a few hours. There's a lot of benefit to taking some of that track prep away. That isn't what they want to hear in Australia because they're just now starting to get it and everybody wants to go fast. But there's a negative side to this just super sticky killer track prep.
Well, Kind of going off of that, like even before I started doing this media gig full time, I stumbled upon some drag racing YouTube channels that were strictly out of Australia, and I fell in love with the absolute insanity that goes on down there.
Yeah.
Just the builds and the cars are so cool and different than what we see. And I mean, you could go look on Dragzine at the articles I've written. I've watched these channels for these different builds. Now, Jamie, I guess you've been to both sides. What are some of the big differences in the racing scenes between Australia and the United States that your average drag racing fan might not necessarily realize, as far as the cars, the combos, the style of racing? What makes what you guys do so cool?
Well, generally, a lot of our cars are all 4 doors. So it's very, very common to see 4 doors, and there's a lot of sayings around that. Probably can't, repeat here, but Lyle knows what I'm talking about. But and drag racing in Australia is really, really big. Or motorsport in general is really, really big. And we're very, very similar in a lot of ways with the Americans. We're really no different. And the world's so small these days in the fact that, everyone's on social media. Lyle's got a lot of friends down here. I've got a lot of friends in America, and it's just, Australia is almost just like another state of America in a lot of ways. But I mean, you don't see a lot of difference in Australia compared to America, to be honest.
Well, like I said, for me, it's the cars and like some of the different stuff you see racing. Like I was watching a video the other day. It was like a funny car versus a door car, what almost looked like a bracket race. And I was trying to figure out what was going on in this situation. But again, it's cool to see the different builds that you guys do down there, and just the whole attitude on, you will build anything to go fast.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess that comes down to the fact that we haven't got the population like you guys have. So we mix a lot of cars in classes together. Basically like any form of race, and you don't want to outlaw cars. You want to get as many cars you can running. So therefore, you've got to have limit the rules so you don't outlaw any cars.
Yeah, I think there's a certain part of American racing culture that needs to kind of pick up on that and stop, writing cars out of the rule books because it offends certain people, especially in heads-up racing, because as long as it's not like a complete outlier, to me, heads-up racing is run what you brung and hope you brung enough for that class.
Well, the problem is that, again, going back to, really, it revolves around the track prep in a sense. The problem is there are so many heads-up racers, in America, and they all operate on different budgets. Like some people can afford unlimited, all out, 2 of everything, got a spare, got a transfer truck and a 56-foot trailer. They've got it all. And some guys roll in on an open trailer, and everybody wants to heads-up race. Well, then you're forced to split these classes up and make all these different classes where this rule fits this car and this rule fits that car, and it's just the way it is, and it's because nobody wants to, well, I'm not going to say nobody, but not everybody wants to bracket race. Everybody wants to heads up race. Well, in order to do that, you have to split them up. You got to put these cars in this class and those cars in that class. And then you end up with 10 or 15 classes at one race. And the downside to that is you never freaking finish. So it's a mess. But real quick, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, something else that has had some strong influence over there, and like Jamie said, we're all connected by social media, is the ability to have a tuner tune your car that's not at the racetrack, and that's another thing that sped them up over there. Is, and again, it's not because they're dumb or not as smart as us, but the track prep and stuff came around here so fast, and there were tuners who were having to adapt to that, and it's just now becoming popular over there. And as opposed to flying your Pete Harrells and your Jamie Millers and your Steve Petties and your Justin Elks, instead of flying them to Australia, you just get them to team view in. They come back from a pass, you hook their computer up. Jamie Miller will sit here at his house, team view in, look at a data log, put a tune up in the car, and never step foot in the country. And that's, again, is something that sped the process up over there and kind of got them up to speed. And he's right. with these tracks coming around over there, it's not going to be long, and they're going to be running just as fast as we are here over there, you know, and it's technology. 100% is technology.
So Jamie, you know, what do you think, what's going to be the next big thing in Australian drag racing? Is it going to be more of the radio stuff coming up, the 235 stuff? You know, what's big, what's going on down there?
Well, what happens is you find a lot of guys, they fall back in the classes because they can't compete. They haven't got the budget and so forth. So you find the lesser classes become more popular, like the 235s and like even now 275 down here. We've got guys on average tracks going for, you know, 14s, 420s, you know, and there's a lot of big cars, which were in 315 are dropping back to 275 now, and they're going to be. We're going to see. I've got no doubt we're going to see a 3-second pass on a 275 next year in Australia. So some of our radial events, we've got different classes where they'll basically have an index, and they're really popular. And very, very rarely the fastest car wins out here because, like Lyle said, you've got to tune around the track. We can't tune for all our horsepower. We just can't do that. I mean, everybody these days are making 1,500 horsepower on a standard motor, LS motor. Oh, sorry, not standard, but you know, just a mild motor, which doesn't take much. You know, just things these days. You know, guys with the tuning, suspension. We've learnt so much, and we're getting, you know, mediocre engines to hold together now. So. You know, you don't have to spend $1 million on, say, an LS or even a Barra out here to go out and run in one of the index classes on radials, which is one of them's a 550 to the 8s, you know, and that class is really popular.
That's you hit on something. One of the interesting things that I like too is what you guys do with non V8 engines down there. To me, in these cars, like they look so unassuming, and then they rip off a 9-second pass, and like I watch these videos, I'm like, that does not look like a 9-second car.
Yeah, no, these Barras out here, they're kind of like the LSs in America there a couple of years back, where you're picking them up for. Well, we can pick them up a Barra for, you know, anywhere from $100 to $200, and they're just a killer engine. They're a 4-litre inline 6 with a twin cam. And I've actually, just speaking on the Barra, I've got a car sitting over at Brutal over in North Carolina, little Cobra 03, which I wanted to run in limited 235 over there, and the engine of choice obviously is an inline 6, because they obviously the guys who wrote the rules for that class, I probably shouldn't say too much here, but anyway, it doesn't matter.
I'll say you better watch out.
Yeah, they haven't accommodated the weight brakes for an inline 6. So an inline 6, I think from memory, was like 50 pound lighter than a V6, and these inline Barra motors, they'll flog any V6 getting around.
Right.
Oh, and people seem to forget Ryan Milliken when he put that diesel Nova out in X275. People laughed at him. They're like, "Oh, that's a joke. It's a diesel." And then he started figuring it out. It's like, "Oh, that car's pretty quick." Right. And then he goes out there and drops the absolute hammer, and all of a sudden John Sears is scratching his head going, "Oh, this isn't good." Because right. You get smart people that know that combo. And I've said this for a while, that 6 bangers in heads-up racing are the least utilized combination out there. Yeah. End of discussion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Nobody,
Go on, Lyle.
I said, you know, just nobody does it, you know, and if a little Australian influence, because that's something where they could benefit and even come over here and wipe them up for a little bit, is their knowledge with that style engine. I mean, there's plenty of people over here who are familiar with it, but none of them dick around with our heads up radial stuff, you know. So somebody like Jamie coming over here with, I mean, just a boatload of knowledge previous, you know, and applying that to the 235 class here would probably do pretty well for a little while. Now, obviously, they're going to make parity rule adjustments and you know, and they'll bring him back down after a few races. But you could clean house for a little bit if you brought a little knowledge over here.
Yeah, I mean, these Barra engines here, I mean, they are so common here, and everyone's racing, and everybody's making big horsepower. And as you know, for a turbo engine, you put the limited turbo, you put it on a smaller engine, well, you're going to get better efficiency, so you're going to make more power there. Plus you got the weight brakes, and as we all know, it's not really the engine that makes the power; it's the turbo, and it's how efficient you can make that turbo.
Well, look, it reminds me too of, was it 5-10 years ago, what the guys did in Outlaw 10.5 over the Middle East with that V6 car and that Corvette, that they basically took a Proline engine and chopped the front half of it off, and and all of a sudden those Outlaw 10.5 rules got adjusted in a hurry because of that car.
Yeah, but the downside to that is that you took an unlimited budget. You took somebody like Steve Petty and Alan Johnson and put their heads together, and they literally created a V6 Hemi. You're right. All they did was take the front two cylinder or the rear two, whichever way you want to look at it. They took two cylinders off of a Hemi and made a V6 Hemi out of it. The downside to that is you got somebody like, let's just say Jamie and I wanted to run a V6 in Outlaw 10.5, and we don't have the budget to buy one of these one-off V6 Hemis. We've just got something standard that you've heard of before. Well, now a combination like that has hurt us, because they went all out on the budget, and have ruined the rules for the rest of the guys that could potentially come into the class and run with a V6. Well, now those guys just aren't going to come, so there are repercussions and there are negatives to all of that. There would be a negative to Jamie coming over here and running the Barra engine in 235 with an inline six, only because he would know more about it. They would make rules around Jamie, and it would hurt everybody else that was ever thinking about bringing that combo in. So there's always two sides to it. There's no good. I do not envy or at all John Sears and what he has to deal with different combinations and different rule sets, because there's always somebody looking into the gray area and gonna screw it up for everybody else.
Well, look at the guys, in the factory supercar stuff in the NHRA. They went in and that class got smashed, unfortunately, with the Copos and the Cobra Jets and the Hemi cars, because some very smart people were given a pile of cash and they said, I want this car to go faster than what it's supposed to. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, the manufacturers are saying, hey guys, let's not shake a tail feather and let's not get too crazy. And then bam, you get this stuff where whole teams are dropping out of
pro stock,
out of that class. They're like, you know what? I'm kind of done with this Cobra Jet stuff because I just dumped a whole bunch of money in this combo.
Right. On the flip side, you're also seeing pro stock teams, like Vincent Nobile and those guys give up pro stock and drop down to the factory stock showdown, and that's, and they're the ones that are willing to go spend, I don't know, 120, 125 on a new Copo, let's just say. And then you literally jerk the motor out of it and spend another 100 or 125 on just the engine. And next thing you know, you got $250,000 in a factory stock showdown car. Like, what? And it ruins it for everybody else. Now it takes $300,000 to have a competitive factory stock showdown car, and it's,
it's like
nothing you can do about it.
It's like Comp Eliminator, which I love watching the NHRA Comp Eliminator racing, because I always say that's the rocket scientists of drag racing. They grab the rule book and they're like, what strange combination could I make go fast? And Jamie could go through and start selling Barra engines here in the United States and go make a killing on that, because I'm sure that there's some little loopholes where that engine would pop in.
I guarantee it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just off topic or change the topic a little bit. We tried to get a Barra in for Horsepower Wars this year. Obviously we couldn't travel because of the pandemic, but we were trying to get a Barra in for Horsepower Wars, and I contacted Lonnie and seeing how much weight he'd give me for a piffy little old 6-cylinder inline production engine, and he trouble is Lonnie, he knows a fair bit, and he didn't. He gave me a little bit of a discount, but it was definitely worth taking it.
Right. Yeah. Well, for the no prep deal, the lower bottom end torque of that V6, it's perfect for that. We've got a little local guy. Well, not local. He's an American. Poppy is what they call him with the Corolla. He's got a little Tacoma motor in that thing, and it doesn't make a bunch of power, but damn if it doesn't get down the road every time he lets go of the button. It's just a perfect combination for that.
Yeah.
Before we jump into the Horsepower Wars stuff, I wanted to ask one more question of Lyle about Pro Mod racing, because you've won on radials, you've gone fast on radials. and we kind of talked about this in the pre-call a little bit, going to this Pro Mod and those big tires, what was it like prepping for that? And then what was it like the first time you did that? Because that's a whole different angry vehicle to drive.
If you've never done it, there's no way to prepare yourself for it. You just got to go do it. We got to the track on Tuesday morning. I'd been at the Snowbirds since the previous Friday. Drove Doug Cooks, that owns Motion Raceworks. I drove his Nova in the streetcar shootout, and then just stayed over, and we were there to test the Pro Mod Tuesday and Wednesday. And Tuesday morning when I got to the racetrack, I was ready to throw up. I was so nervous. And I've been fast. I've been fortunate to have been given the opportunity to have driven some really fast stuff. But there was nothing that you can drive to prepare you for that, and Justin Elks, who is the owner of Modern Racing and my crew chief and tuner, he told me, he's like, look, we can back it down some, but it cost X amount for this car to go down the racetrack every time. And pretty much every time it goes down the racetrack, it needs to count. In other words, we need to be getting valuable data. We can't just go to be going, so, and I told you before, I've been 104 to the 60 foot prior to getting in that Pro Mod. And the first time I let go of the button, it went 977. It's literally just turn your eyeballs inside out is what it felt like, and we took it. I took it 200 feet or 100 to 200. I took it to the 330. Then we went 8th mile, and then I went 1,000 feet 2 or 3 times. And then on the 8th and 9th pass, we went quarter mile. The fastest I went to the 60 foot was into the 940s. I'm not going to say exactly what it was. Went bottom 370s to the 8th mile, and it went deep into the 5s at over 250 to the quarter. And there's nothing to prepare you for that. There's nothing to prepare you for the acceleration and how fast you cover that last 8th mile. There is definitely nothing to prepare you for when the parachutes hit at 250 miles an hour. It literally, I felt like I picked my eyeballs up off the floorboard the first time I did it. You throw them going through the mile-an-hour cone, and they hit just past the finish line. It feels like somebody double foot drop kicked you in the back, man. It's freaking wild. But overall, it was a very successful first test session. Everybody was happy. We're going to go back, and they added a new rule. The day after we got back, they added NHRA changed the rule book. We can no longer have the cars automatically shifted. In other words, it can't be shifted by an air pneumatic or an electrical solenoid. We have to shift them by hand somehow. There has to be some kind of driver input. So today I was at Modern figuring out where we wanted to put the shift light, and then whether I was going to try to shift it with a button or pushing the shifter by hand, because we do run a Turbo 400 in that car. So got something new to add to the arsenal there that I'm going to have to learn. But overall, my first test session in the Pro Mod went pretty well.
I say it sounds like you had a good time, whipping a 250 mile an hour door car down the track. Jamie, what's the most bananas thing you've ever driven?
Most of my stuff's all been street cars, so probably my SN95 is probably the fastest, 7-second sort of deal. But that's pretty well. That's my limit.
Yeah, you're like, I'm good at that. Yeah, absolutely. It's just, to step it up, just the expense is just crazy, and best part about it, I know my limits. Yeah, it's budgetary as well as just what you feel comfortable driving, because I know some guys that have the budget to go really fast, and they've stepped back and said, you know what, this isn't fun. It's too much. I want to be able to enjoy the ride a little bit more rather than trying to concentrate on not dying as I'm going down the track.
Yeah.
And I just got lucky and joined, and was asked to join a good team. Richard Freeman's has assembled a dynasty out there at Elite Motorsports. And I was just lucky enough to be chosen to come on board, as a hired gun, essentially. So, it's not something that, me, my dad, and all my closest friends combined could pile money up and afford on our own. So we just joined a really good team, and I'm just, thankful to have been chosen.
Kind of shifting gears here. This is the part that I was really kind of looking forward to, is talking horsepower wars with you guys, because for me, the show, like where it started, where it's been, where it's gone, and just seeing everything that I get to see is like essentially I'm a fly on the wall, and I get to see how everything unfolds. And it's interesting to see how it unfolds and then how we end up having to tell the story and portray it, and then hearing all the extra stuff. And one of the things that always entertains me is the car selection portion of it, because the teams do get to see the cars beforehand so they can kind of game plan a little bit. But there's a lot of gamesmanship that even goes into the car selection process. You know, for you guys, you know, we'll start with you, Lyle. What was it like for Team Biggin the first time you guys had to select the car?
Well, I mean, we didn't even know what to expect. You know, like we rolled into Horsepower Wars Season 1 and had no idea what we were in for, how the selection process was going to go down, you know, and then we have the Olympics and we ended up winning, you know, and that year we got to keep the car that we chose. There were more to choose from, and we were able to keep the car that we chose, which, you know, now is my beloved Beer Money. Nice shirt you got on there. But you know, in year 2, when we came back to defend our title, we won the Olympics again, and we did not get to keep the car that we chose, or the truck, should I say. They gave us a little twister in there and gave us the Granada station wagon that we call the Moonshine Missile. So knew what to expect the second year. Did not prepare for it in any way, shape, or form. Came right back that morning, hungover again. But knew what to expect the second year, and same result. So I don't know that Jamie and them really necessarily were ready for what came at them. They definitely didn't do any physical fitness or training before they got there. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, Jamie, walk us through that whole process, because again, the thing I find entertaining about the Olympic side of things and being there is that the camera doesn't do any justice how big of a man you are, Jamie, or the guys in your team are.
How big Nathan Clark is.
Yeah, I mean, did you guys have to get like some type of like special like waiver to bring him into the country? Was that
they
like
put him in a cage and put him underneath the plane?
Yeah, how'd that work?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Nathan's shoulders are about 2 pick handles wide. He's huge. But well, we came over. I'll give you a little bit of an insight what we did how we prepared for Horsepower Wars. We watched season 1. I watched season 1 over and over, and I was just trying to get any sort of clues what was going on. And obviously, I looked at the Biggins team because by far they were out in front. So when we went to season 2, that's who we had to beat. We knew we had to beat them. And that's not giving anything away on the other teams. They were very, very good, but Biggins' team had experience, and that's what we saw we had to beat. So the preparation we did was unbelievable. What I did, I had spreadsheet after spreadsheet, and it didn't really worry me what car we got, because I had the whole recipe set out for every single car. We didn't really want the Camaro because it was so much work, but the Camaro was potentially the fastest car. But yeah, like I say, when we went to season 2, Biggins, that team, they had a target on their back. So,
and again, it's interesting that you mentioned kind of going after and using them as the formula, and it plays to me into the engine selection. Is, you know, the LS platform has dominated so far, the Turbo LS platform. You know, why do you think that is? I mean, you know, the big block Chevy nitrous combo almost pulled it off. But, you know, with the Turbo LS, you know, does it work well on Horsepower Wars because of the cubic bang per dollar?
Budget. It's totally budget. We wanted to go big block nitrous, but we could not make the budget work. We couldn't come close. We kept on falling short about $1,500 to and a big block nitrous, given the weights, very, very hard to beat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, and per dollar, he's right. You know, the LS is the cheapest thing per horsepower, is the cheapest thing you can build by far. You know, like it just makes the power. you know, and we were a rebuilt transmission away from winning it again. You know, I mean, we came back home, rebuilt the transmission, and you know, people can say, bullshit, you pulled some weight out. Biggin is another 30 pounds heavier than me, probably. He drove the car in the exact same trim it was in when we left Georgia, and it went 520, you know, and literally all we did was just rebuild the transmission, you know, and so he's right. If you could figure it out in the budget, you know, and we did, there were some things that we wish we would have had enough to have built a better transmission, and it would have been a different outcome. But it is the most horsepower you can build per the weight. He's right, you know, but it is the hardest thing to build under the budget by far.
And again, it always cracks me up, and I always mention this, is that when we do the application process, so you see the guys on Facebook that are they're the experts on the internet. Everybody thinks this is so easy to do, and it's like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got to play until you get punched in the face. This isn't just a simply like, you're not hanging parts. You're just not ordering stuff from Summit. You've got to know how to put this stuff together and make it work.
Right. Well, Jamie will agree. The $10,000 shootout, those 10 days are like being punched in the face repeatedly. You know, like every morning you wake up and Mike Tyson just right hooks you right in the mouth. You know, like it is not easy. And I'll be the first one to tell you, we've done it twice. We've won it the first year. And Jamie and them have done it once, and they won it. Like it is by far one of the toughest 10 days in a race shop I've ever had.
Yeah. Nothing goes right. Every day has got its challenges. Nothing goes right. We prepared, and you know what? It's knowing what I know now would be better next time.
Yep.
But I give you an example of the extent we went to it with the planning, not only up front, but we came back and we built a sister engine and put in my drag week car, and we were making around about 1,020 horsepower. So we'd done a lot of testing, although we didn't actually produce the numbers over there. We expected to be running, we thought we could run 525s. We had enough data to run 525s, but it didn't happen. I mean, we had enough on the day to make it happen. And like Lyle said, you know, they were only a smidgen away from pulling it off. And that's all it is. I mean, look how close the last race was, 1/1000th of a second. So if I, you know, and I'll just run through the race. I mean, I knew I had to be sharp to beat Lyle. All the races leading up, I wasn't trying to cut lights or anything like that. And the chassis's a little bit slow, and you know, I'd been practicing in the van, you know, on the lights, and you know, to sharpen me up. And then so I was cutting pretty good numbers in the van, and then went out, and then did I smoke you, Lyle, off the lights? I think I did, didn't I?
Yeah, well, I was like 114 and he was 10 something, you know, and again, like he could have made it really bad had he cut a good light, and I could have won if I would have cut a decent light. But after I rolled through and did the burnout, I didn't have a trans brake. So I foot braked it and held the RPM. It still had RPM reference, but it would not hold the car. So I was foot braking it and holding the trans brake just for RPM at the same time. And, you know, it did.
To be honest, I don't think those cars can react that fast. I mean, I know when I nail a light, and that around a 100 light on that car was pretty well, I would say it's probably the limit to get it moving. You know, I stage early, and I think I did a 108, a 0.108 on the light. And but I mean, I beat Lyle to the 60 foot. And then next thing you know, I looked over and thought, shit, this bastard's next to me. He pulled in second gear. He pulled a guard on me, and I thought, shit, I'm in trouble here. But I knew I had the legs in top gear. So as soon as I pulled top gear, I just put my nose in front, and that's how close it was. But we were pretty much
dead even at the mile-an-hour cone. You know, like when I looked over, I was like, I have no idea. And from the mile-an-hour cone to the finish line, he just poked it out there, and he got it. You know.
But he was half a car. He was half a car for most of the track, and I just knew I had that little top end charge, So it's basically when I put it in top gear, and that's when I just nose past it. But it was a close race, awesome race, so much fun.
It was way better than season one when we donkey gapped Big Daddy Dwayne Guttridge by a couple Greyhound buses. So at least it gave the fans something to watch.
Man, Lyle,
Yeah.
you're lucky assault charges weren't pressed against you for that beating. That
I
was,
know. You know, and he's still so salty about it. You know, he's basically doesn't show his face at a drag strip anymore. You know, and I'll make a deal now with little Dwayne that if he'll come back to the drag strip, I'll shake his hand or give him a hug or something. I don't want him to stay hiding for the rest of his life. You know, I mean, I got beat by a bunch of honkies from Australia, and I still, even though I'd like to kick Jamie in his balls, I'll still get on the podcast with him and shoot the shit. You know, so.
And that's what to me has made parts of the show so entertaining. Is the interaction and the trash talking that goes on between everybody is it can get a little bit tense at times, but it's fun because you all are like your brothers in arms and embracing the suck at that thing. Because like I said, those 10 days are just, you got to find some way to entertain yourself at some point to have a little bit of a smile.
A lot of the ways that we entertained ourselves with this right here, you know, all you did was cheer on 5 or 8 o'clock or whatever it was when we got out of there and everybody went home and hit the piss. So, and you know, on the flip side, I see that Jamie hasn't lost a whole lot of weight since the last time I saw him, and that's because he's still been eating the burrito they stuffed in their freaking pockets during the eating competition during the show.
No, that's my problem. Too much of this sort of stuff.
And that's the other funny thing is watching some of the rule shenanigans that people try to pull. And it's sort of like, you know, if you look at kids, the oldest is usually able to get away with the most. So the oldest season of Horsepower Wars, there's, you know, a lot of creative things that happen.
Right.
Lonnie and the guys got smart. The second season, creative things happen, but y'all got smarter in some aspects and were able to outsmart the Fox. This third season, man, those poor boys, they just Lonnie's a brutal man. When he brings someone out and calls them in front of the school to lay the smack down, you feel bad for him.
You got to know who Lonnie Grimm. If you come into Horsepower Wars and don't know who Lonnie Grimm is, then you're gonna get caught because Lonnie, like he's the know-all, say-all in all tech departments across the board. I mean, he's a technical director for all kinds of shit, you know? So this isn't his first rodeo, you know, and we know that the Australians did some cheating, but I'm going to tell you right now, there was nobody who cheated more blatantly than the Dream Team. I mean, I'm just unbelievable. Like, embarrassing, really. You know, embarrassing for comp cams, Dave Henninger. I mean, you know, they spray painted the valves to make them look like they had carbon on them. And all it took was Lonnie Grimm as a can of brake clean and a rag, and they were freshly polished comp cams engraved. Freaking, I mean, come on, man. Like, you couldn't do any better than that.
I have worked.
I mean, you got to go there, and it's all about the rules tell you what you can do, but there's a whole things the rules say what you can't do.
Right.
You know, sorry, other way around. The rules tell you what you can't do or can do, but it's all about interpreting. You know, like like you got to devalue things. I mean, that's one of the things we did with our converter. We got a converter. We set it on fire. It was a brand new converter, but we can't turn up with a brand new converter because we'll pay a brand new price. So we defaced it to get the value down, and we still paid. You know, we still paid top dollar. Well, I think we paid about $280 for the converter, right. which was in line with pretty well everybody else as well. So apart from Lonnie was very consistent. I've got to say that. You know, like if you turned up, everyone pretty well paid the same price for parts, you know, across the board.
Being on the receiving end of a dressing down from Lonnie Grimm is not a comfortable experience.
You gotta have some thick skin.
I have worked on a car and we have tried to plead our case with Lonnie, and he's not disrespectful, but it's just like you just sit there and you're like, oh, this just, it isn't going to end. And he's so nice about it. Like he nicely punches you in the face and you just say, thank you.
Well, I mean, I cussed Lonnie as bad as I've cussed anybody in a really long time. And I'll give you one of the examples is on the starting line at South Georgia when we were having trouble getting the car to crank because of our battery situation. And he told me I had to fire right now. Well, we got the car to crank. I pull in the water box and they're not done cleaning the track up. So I had to shut it off because it was getting hot and back up. Well, then they tell us our run isn't going to count towards qualifying. And I got out of that car and I cussed Lonnie up one side and down the other, told him how much of a piece of shit he was, on and on and on. And the next day, Lonnie hugged me and said, "You feel better?" I was like, yeah. Like he doesn't care.
He is a world's nicest bloke. And the worst thing about it in horsepower wars, everybody's lying about what they're paid for something and whatever else. And the worst thing about it, I'm looking Lonnie right in the eye and I'm lying to him. I thought, shit, I could lie to my wife much easier than I could lie to Lonnie.
Feel like it's your golden ticket to hell for lying to him.
The story about what transpired on the starting line, I can 100% validate because I'm taking pictures and I hear this ruckus start. I'm fixing to think that there's a fist fight. I'm like, someone is legit about to get a mud hole stomped in them. Like it's one of those things where there's a fight because everybody's circling around and they're all looking. I'm like, this isn't good. I get up there. I'm like, I see Lonnie standing there. I'm like, who's about to fight Lonnie? And then I see Lyle. I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah. But Lonnie and I are still friends. I call him periodically to talk about different things, and he calls me, and we're going to go duck hunting and all kind of shit. So Lonnie is a big punching bag the majority of his work career, I got a feeling. I haven't had any run-ins with him anywhere else because you're not trying to cheat like you are at Horsepower Wars.
Yeah.
But I know during Horsepower Wars that man takes some blows, not literal, but verbal blows day in and day out. And they just breeze right by. He doesn't bother him at all. He listens. He'll stand there and nod his head. He doesn't get mad. He doesn't cuss back. Keeps a nice low tone. He'll smile at you, which pisses me off more when he gives you that smirk, God, I just want to punch you right now. You know where. But he handles it well. Thank you, Lonnie, for not hitting me.
So you guys have now been commissioned. We're going to play a little scenario here. You guys have been commissioned to write a book about, horsepower wars and, yada, yada, yada. You have to do a chapter on the formula to win horsepower wars. Lyle, what do you put in that chapter?
Strategize first of all. You need to start thinking about this like Jamie and those guys did months before you ever show up for the show. You need to have a game plan for each and every car, no matter what, because you never know which one you're going to end up with, should I say. And the second thing you need to do is be really good at cheating. I mean, it's just honest. I mean, you've got to be good at deep dodging and bobbing and weaving in the gray area. Figure out where you can get by with what, and always have a backup plan if your cheating doesn't work. Do not depend on getting black spray painted titanium valve through tech and have no backup plan. You better have another set back at the house that are not titanium, maybe a stock set that you've measured up and everything seems to be good, that you can bring in or whatever. Jamie and them probably had a backup plan if they dinged them on the converter and wanted $500 or $800 for it. Always have a plan B, and you better have plan C here and there, because more than likely, like Jamie said, it is not going to go right the first time. Never will, never has. And you always need to have a backup plan for the backup plan.
So Lyle's tips are have lots of plans and be really good. Cheating's an ugly word. We'll say creative rules interpretation.
Whatever you want to call it. Be better. Be a good Australian. Be a good rude.
Jamie, what are the Australians putting in their chapter on how to win horsepower wars?
Right. First thing, you got to plan, and like Lyle said, have a plan A, plan B, plan C. So you've got to have that many plans. But the other biggest thing, you've got to pick a team who can build 550 cars. Generally, a 550 will win it. Yep. It's no good having all these, top end guys, because these guys are, and I don't want to mention any names, but you don't want guys there who blow the budget on an intake manifold.
Right.
So you've got to have a team who races with shit day in, day out. And I knew we were a strong challenge, because this is exactly the shit we race over here. So we knew what to build. So if you're gonna build try and enter for it, build plan, and then build your team around guys who race with dog shit cars day in, day out.
And I think to add on to that is, you've seen in the past 2 seasons, the 2 seasons that had a dream team, the team who came in there and none of them knew each other struggled the most. You've got to assemble a good team. I completely agree with that. But you also, the majority of them need to have worked together before, or at least know each other pretty well. Like for our team in particular, we had a good leader in Biggin who was head of fab. We had a good leader on the engine side, Pete, and then you had a bunch of Indians underneath them. I wasn't worth a shit for much of it at all. I managed to drive the thing decent, but Biggin was head of fab, and he had a damn good helper in Chris Bailey. Bailey did a lot of the fab work beside Biggin and is great at it. Pete did all of the engine work and had Chad to help him with some of the electronic side of it. We had all the bases covered, and everything just we all meshed well, and everybody knew their place and did their job. Now, we still struggled, but when everybody doesn't get along and everybody doesn't mesh, and then you have the problems and the struggles during the build, it is a complete disaster. The Australians, I guess most of y'all knew each other pretty well. Maybe there was around a little bit, but overall, everybody knew their place for the most part, and everybody knew what their job was. And the Midwest guys probably did it better than anybody. They just struggled the most at the racetrack. Those guys raced together with complete shit all the time. They're LS Turbo gurus. Everybody in the Midwest shop knew their job. Everybody did their job. They were the first ones done, and probably arguably had the cleanest looking car. Us and y'all had the most cobbled together shit at the end of it, but we just raced better than everybody else, but
I wouldn't like to come up against the Midwest guys on a no prep, because but in saying that, I knew they weren't going to have the horsepower on that track.
Right.
You had to build a plenty of horsepower for that track, and to go back this year, season 3, we wanted to go back with a Barra, and you'd only have to go a 6.0 on a no prep there to win that. And I think the quickest was a little bit slower than that, but you got to know what you're building. I guess I'm trying to say, you got to know what you're building. Your team has got to be rock solid. Everyone's got to leave their egos at home and follow the plan.
Yeah, you got to determine a leader before you get there, and just know that at the end of the day, whatever the leader wants, whichever direction the leader wants to go, as long as it isn't just bizarre, that's just kind of, even if maybe you didn't agree, like I was cool with building the big block nitrous, but I really wanted to duplicate the LS Turbo and go right back to what we knew, because we could go, with the LS Turbo in quarter mile trim with beer money, we went 551, and that was with a quarter mile gear. And, so I feel like we could have went a good bit faster than that with the LS Turbo combination.
The rules, the only thing with that, Lyle, the rules were a little bit different.
Yeah, they were a little stricter. Yeah.
Yeah, they were stricter, as in you had to be heavier with an LS Turbo than the year previous. You weren't allowed to run a nitrous kit on it this year.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. That's true. I didn't think about that.
So they weren't the same car.
Right.
Yeah, and like I say, anybody else that's going to enter a side or whatever, go back to season 1, go back to season 2, and study it and watch what everybody did and how they did it. And basically, that's how we beat Biggins. We knew more about Biggins than they knew about themselves.
Right. Yeah. And that's one thing that we did not do. I didn't research anybody that was coming up against us. Well, they all knew who was coming whenever they were selected. We didn't really find out until later on, but I didn't know anything about any of these guys. Honestly, we came in assuming we were going to build a rock solid big block nitrous motor and stomp their ass.
Yeah.
We did.
I mean, we knew the personalities that well. We knew how to rattle Pete. Like
Right.
Pete's a class act, but he was easy to get inside his head.
Right.
And so we rattled Pete. Biggins, you can't rattle him. He's probably like me. It doesn't matter what you say to him. Doesn't just laughs at you. He knows what he wants, what he's doing.
Right.
Like and Lyle, we knew what Lyle was about. Lyle turned it on if he didn't get sauce on his hot dog. So, but we knew everybody. We knew how to handle them.
Going off of that, I don't know how much you guys have watched season 3, so chime in as you will. What do you guys think of season 3 of what you've seen so far? We're coming down to the wire here, to the race deal. Who you guys, if we're in Vegas, who you slide your money on?
I mean, I'll be honest, man. I haven't really watched much of it. I've watched a little bit here and there, and what I have watched, I was not very impressed with. I guess not really. The only people I really know from it are Jim Howe and Puddin', just because they're from the radio world. They've got David Reese on the team and Jim's dad, and I kind of expected them to just come in and wipe up, and that just be the end of it because of their knowledge across the board. They've got turbo knowledge, and David Reese is a freaking mastermind with a chassis. I kind of felt like they had built an A squad there, but I don't know, man. Maybe it's the no prep part of it, or just, I don't know. I just wasn't that impressed personally. And, and maybe I'm biased because I was a part of the first 2 seasons and, kind of had some direct input there. But, Jamie, I don't know how you felt about it. That was just my personal opinion.
Well, we at the start, we knew what teams were getting in, and we thought we were going back before the COVID hit. And we knew who the strong team were. The strong teams was Marcus Thompson and Mid America Customs. We knew they raced with dog shit stuff, and I knew they were going to be competitive, especially MAK Team Mac. But like I say, we planned for them, and I'm pretty confident only because of the experience. The years before, we would have been very competitive again this year. But Team Mac and Marcus Thompson's team out of Philly, they were the 2 dangers. But in saying that, I was talking to Jim Howe. Jim Howe contacted me, and I didn't think he would have much for the competition. But when I spoke to him on the phone and asked him what he's doing and gave him a bit of advice, he had a rock solid plan. And I thought, shit, he could pull this off.
I am strongly lobbying myself to have season 4, if we can make it happen, be the Champions edition. I would love to see you guys plus who wins this year, and then maybe a 4th team that's just kind of or maybe more teams, but definitely a 4th team that kind of really mix things up. Because I think at that point you will have a competition from front to back that is good competition and entertaining TV.
Yeah, and I think they should have another season and get a 4th true winner, and not bring the winner. I mean, I know it's been the run of the mill here is to bring the winner back, because then you could potentially have the first back-to-back winner, but maybe have another season where they don't bring a returning team back, get a 4th winner, and then have a champions reunion type race. And I really like the idea of having the competition and then going straight to the racetrack. Let's not put it on Joe Blow's hauler and have the cars burn up on the way back over. Let's just go straight to the racetrack. And I really like the no prep stuff. I think it makes it more of a, you've just built this brand new hot rod, and now you've also got to tune it. Whereas when you go somewhere like South Georgia, you just throw the power in it and let it go, so. And I'm also biased because we've done a lot of no prep racing here recently and really kind of like it. So, or maybe marginally prep, maybe give teams the option to run the radial that will still work, or stay on the slick, and kind of make it a give or take there. So I like the idea of bringing everybody back.
I will tease it up a little bit more that, you know, I know how everything ends, but I will say that the racing this year, like on the no prep surface, it's badass. Like I'm a fan of no prep and on the slicks like that. I mean, it's some damn good racing. And I think there's something to say about as well having a true fourth champion. But I've got, you know, all kinds of bad ideas because we always try to come up with ways to throw curveballs, torture the teams, and come up with different ways. And I think that having that ability to have three teams and then bring maybe another team back that was on there before to help people push people's buttons, maybe a fourth team that's all stars of previous seasons, maybe a professional team, who knows? But I think it would just be interesting to see how the three winning teams react to all that, what you guys would do.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Jamie, what do you want? What would you want to see if you were given the keys to the castle?
Well, you know, it'd be cool, and it won't happen. It'd be cool if they brought it out here in our backyard. Bring the teams to Australia. I mean, but that's, you know, that's a hugely costly, you know, huge cost exercise. But you know, to race on our tracks and our climate and our backyard, our local knowledge, that'd be cool. But no, I think Lyle's right. I mean, the trouble is now with the pandemic, it's not fair for us to go back because the other team won, and you know, I think probably the fairest way now is to have the fourth season, and then all winners go back, and I think that would make for some pretty good television. It'd be. I know we'll go back a lot more, you know, planned and probably a lot more aggressive in the way we do things. And I can guarantee you, you know, Big and Lyle would be, you know, they'd go back a lot more aggressive. And everybody knows what to go back and to do and what to expect. So, yeah, it would be the gloves would be off, I reckon, if they had the champions.
Yeah, you know, and one thing we had talked about at the shop is, you know, eventually, and maybe even now you've seen it, and from now on, it may turn into an LS Turbo Shootout exclusively, you know, and the only way to avoid that, you know, is to not only choose the cars, but then choose a crate style combination. And you know, if you win the shootout, you either get to choose your combination or choose your car, and then, you know, it flip flops. Whoever chooses the car gets the last pick of the engine, or whoever picks the engine gets the last choose of the car. You know, so in order to avoid an all LS Turbo Shootout, that's really the only way to do that. Now, the flip side of that is if whoever gets the LS Turbos got the cheapest way to do it, whoever ends up with the Coyote or maybe the late model Mopar or, you know, or the Bear, or, you know, then you've got to adjust the budget likewise to kind of compensate for that. So it would take a lot of logistical planning to get that right. But I think there is a way to do it. It's just whether or not it's worth all the hassle to try and make it fair.
Oh, well, I mean, one of the things I tossed up when we got the invite back and the rules got sent through to us, I wanted, you know, obviously a Barra, but the other one I was tossing up with because I didn't want to carry the weight, especially in a no prep. I think it was £100 for an LS. So a 5.1 Windsor, and especially on no prep, you didn't have to make a shitload of power.
No, right.
So, you know, a Barra or a 5.1 Windsor would have been really, really competitive. And then, but I was trying to get the cost of a Bellhausen across the line because you get a late model fuel injected Windsor. Well, you're back in the, you know, the same ballpark as an LS if you can get the Bellhausen.
Yeah.
Well, guys, our time here is coming to an end. It's been awesome to have you both on here, and this will be the first time I get to do this. I give my guests the opportunity to do their John Force impersonation, thank their sponsors, fill out where to be on social media. So, Jamie, we'll start with you. Tell the people where they can find you at, what you got going on, you know, social media, the whole deal. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Well, formerly we were Enemies Everywhere, and we had my brother have gone different ways. So now I've started up Enemies Racing Australia, where we're doing our same old products, our billet intercoolers, our anti-roll bar kits. We're doing wheels now. There's a whole heap of other products we're doing, you know, all our titanium stuff. But yeah, so you can find us on Facebook and Enemies Racing Australia or ERA. But yeah, so we're out and about. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, whatever else.
Lyle, you've got a lot going on. Tell the people where they can find you and learn about your Pro Mod deal and, everything else you got going on.
Yeah, so anywhere on social media, Lyle Barnett on Instagram, Lyle Barnett on Facebook. You can follow the new Pro Mod endeavor. But, my key sponsors that we've kept along, Motion Raceworks has been with me for a while, and I can't thank Doug, Andy, and Brian enough there. Holly EFI, we use them pretty much exclusively. TBM Brakes, Jason Smith, one of our team members from TBM, line-to-line abradable powder coatings. We've got Race Pack and Spa Technique and Fire Aid, and I've got a little YouTube channel, Boosted Beard Racing, that you can go check out, which I haven't updated in a while, and I plan to get better at. Looking forward to the 2020 NHRA Pro Mod season with Modern Racing and Elite Motorsports. We are still seeking sponsorship if anybody's out there, but we'll just see how it goes, man. I appreciate you having me on, and Jamie, it's good to see your ugly mug from across the big pond. I hope you get nothing done today and get pissed tonight.
By the way, Lyle, if you need any help driving that Pro Mod, you got my number.
Oh yeah, right into the wall, right.
Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Jamie's old ass would have a heart attack the first time he let go of the button of that thing. They don't make a pour in wide enough to get your big ass in it anyway.
Oh, boy.
I'd like to experience it.
Oh. All right, we had a little technical issue there, but guys,
it's probably your foul language cutter inner coming on. Oh, Jamie's muted. That's good. That's exactly what we needed, was to mute Jamie. I can't hear him. This is great.
I unmuted. I found the button.
Oh God, I give you guys the keys of the castle for 5 minutes. Lyle goes crazy. Jamie sets the thing on fire. That's it. I'm calling it. We're done. Thanks for coming on, guys. Look forward to see you at the track soon, and have a very great holiday.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
See you, man.
Yeah. And Merry Christmas to everybody.